What's going on, everyone? Today, we're going to be going over the topic of the role of the brain and how it relates to strength. So, what does our brain have to do with strength, and why should I know this? Why you, as a person seeing this, thinks like, why should I take this into consideration? Well, there's a couple things that we're going to dive into. First, I want to get into why you should care for this. Has there been times that you get to the gym and you feel like, man, this weight feels heavier than before? And you don't know. Usually this is something that you can bang out pretty easy. You put the weight on the bar, you hit whatever sets and reps just to warm up, and you're like, this is typically easy for me, but today feels a lot harder, right? And this happens not just with lifting, it happens with other things, but there's a reason for that. So we have our central nervous system, and we're going to dive a little bit into the depth of what the responsibility of the central nervous system does for us and strength, right? So these are some of the things that I just kind of want to break down. First, the central nervous system is basically the governor in your body. This is the governor from your brain all the way down to your spinal cord. And your central nervous system really has to do with how you feel and how are you able to operate in terms of strength. A lot of times people don't have the capacity or the understanding of how much weight is really on the bar in order for them to move it. And there is a lot of psychological components to this, but a lot of it's just physiology, just regular physiology. A lot of things that you're probably not taking consideration because sets and reps are there's designed for a reason, and there's a reason for this. So the two main differences between these is your central nervous system, which is the governor, is the commander of this is how your brain is able to send signals to your nerves, and your nerves send signals to your muscles, and those muscles are operated by contraction and relaxation, and this is how you operate, right? So you think about the brain, think about the nerves that come down the spine and how they are routed to your muscles, and from your muscles then you can operate. So if the brain isn't doing a great job at recruiting those muscles, then you're going to have difficulty with this. Now, how do you operate this, and how should I be concerned of how I approach my training? This is a lot into a topic, so I kind of want to take my time and dissect this with you. So, not only do you have your central nervous system, but you have your peripheral nervous system. What the peripheral nervous system is in charge of is basically the signaling of your nerves to your muscle. A lot of times, what happens is it takes you a couple reps and a couple sets for you to really truly get warmed up. You can't just think about getting into your lift as if I'm just going to do two sets and then I'm ready. A lot of times it's not like that. A lot of times it takes the person a lot more time to prepare. You have to think that not only does your central nervous system need to warm up, but your muscular system has to warm up too, right? Your body temperature has to increase, your muscle firing rate has to increase as well. So in physiology and exercise physiology, we talk about different muscle types. And you probably have heard of fast twitch muscles, slow twitch muscles. There's a variety of muscle types. But not to get in detail with that, I just kind of want you to understand that slower muscle types are typically muscle types like your calves, your hands. These are typically more type 1 muscle fibers. And the reason why they're type 1 is because those are muscles that are constantly being utilized, right? You never think about your hands being sore after you use them all day, or your calves being sore after you've been all day doing whatever you need to do, whether working, whatever it is. But the moment you exceed a little bit more force, so think about from walking to running, there is a reason why you're able to propel yourself a lot faster. It's because you start recruiting bigger muscle groups. And not only that, but you start recruiting bigger muscle fibers. And those muscle fibers are uh, typically the type 2X muscle fibers. And when you think about this, there is a whole system at play, right? From the brain down to the spine, from the spine to the nerve to the muscle, from the muscle to the muscle fiber, and from there you have your contractions that come in point, and from there is the myosin head and the actin head attracting themselves to create a contraction, and then there's a release, and then it repeats. There's a lot of stuff that kind of happens within this time. The reason why I bring this up is because this is important to know when you're approaching your body. You can't just think about your body like, I'm just going to force myself to bang out a couple reps and this is what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to feel better. No, you have to think about this as a very complex system. And one of my favorite ways to approach this when I'm working with a client or I'm training in a group personal training setting, I always ask, how do you feel? Because I might have something programmed and that programming might be, I might have something programmed so nicely to the T. I'm talking about repetitions, how much intensity, how fast I want it to go, how slow I want you to do this certain exercises. I have everything down to a T. But depending on how you're moving that day, I might have to tailor it. I might have to be like, you know what? I see how you're warming up. I see how you feel. I know that last night you probably didn't get enough sleep. I take all these things in consideration because if you're not fully operating on 100%, I can't force you to go to that 100%. Does that mean that everyone's fully at 100% sometimes to go work out? No, there's a lot of variables that go into this. Nutrition, sleep, how used to your, how used, how often are you hitting those muscle groups? When was the last time you trained speed or strength or power, hypertrophy, endurance? What is it that where is it that you play at? Where is it that you find your strength at? There's so many things that dive into this. Now, when I think about all these things and how you're going about it, you have to think about how's your efficiency. So let's take, for example, you're going on a back squat and you put weight that you probably feel comfortable with. You do the first round of this and you realize that it's heavier than usual. You have to think that movement is a language, right? So if I was trying to say a brand new word and I'm having difficulty trying to say this word, it's going to take me a couple times for me to get this word across appropriately, for me to sound out every vowel in that word. It's going to take me a couple times. After a while, I'm able to repeat that and I'm able to speak that word a little bit faster and a little bit more clear and without less problems. And in training, we call it as automation. So we're talking about how can you make this movement less forceful and more efficient. How easier is it for you to do? So think about your warm-ups as your first set should be a central nervous system warm-up. It should be something that you have to really kind of play with it and see how it's feeling with yourself, right? So how is it affecting me? How is it that I feel after? Do I feel like I need to line up the load? Do I feel like I need to move it a little bit faster? So you start paying attention to this. The next thing would be getting your system to be able to move in a more appropriate manner. So when you're doing these exercises, do I need to focus on speed? Do I need to focus on slowing it down? And that is, for me, one of the biggest portions to it. I think a lot of times, we want to go faster because maybe we don't have enough time or we're trying to do a lot. But you're better off going slower. Doing it slower, doing a single set slower can provide a lot of feedback to you. Not only from how you feel, but how are you approaching the exercise? How are you approaching the movement? How are you approaching that set and those sets and reps and those repetitions? So this is something we need to get into play. So when you're thinking about strength and why are you not getting stronger, it's a lot of things that you have to take account for. But most of the things is that you're probably not ready for it. Your tissue is not warmed up. The elasticity in your muscles are probably not where they need to be. You probably need to recruit more type 2 muscle fibers. You need to recruit more fibers. And you don't do this by doing it slower. You probably need to do it faster. That's why I'm a big fan of doing it slow, doing it fast, and then finding where you find success at. Where is that you feel a little bit more comfortable with? And in training, this is so important to understand the role of your central nervous system, because um, when you're thinking about how this is going to apply in your training, think about when you're programming and you're going to the gym, you do your warm ups. And your warm ups, in my opinion, in the beginning, it should always target not only the exercises that are going to complement the lifts that you're going to be doing. So if you're going to be bending a lot, you have to make sure that you have to target those muscle groups that are going to do that. So if you're going to do squats, make sure you fire up your back, fire up your glutes, your glute med, you're warming up your hamstrings, your adductors, you're doing some calf raises, you're doing everything that complements the movement itself, right? Adding some core to it. So you want to complement all those things. But most importantly, you probably should be focusing on your deficiencies. And what do I mean by deficiencies? Deficiencies is something that we all have. We all have something that we probably need to pay a little bit more in mind to. For example, I have athletes that I work with, and they're so good at being athletic. And by them being so good is that they do everything fast and they do everything explosive. And this is great. I love that they move this way. I love that they approach it that way. But the other end to the sword is that because they do everything so fast, they don't really take the time to elongate the muscle. So when they go do certain exercises, they're not moving the way I want them to move. They're moving too fast. They're doing it with so much intensity that I'm not really getting the value of technique. And technique really is a lot slower. Think about if you were trying to balance on a ball, right? Um, you can't necessarily do this slow. And this is why I like to have a little bit of stability training before doing any kind of real strength work, is because the stability component is going to allow you to recruit not only the big muscle groups, but the smaller muscle groups that complement those bigger muscle groups. So I think about it like that. I think about, first, we need to turn on the car. We need to make sure the car warms up. And before that, then we start tapping into different gears, right? Then we can eventually go on the highway, we can go fast. And the same way is the same approach that you should be applying it to your training. If you're thinking about having longevity with your training, it can't just be so fast. It can't just be like, I'm gonna go inside the gym, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that and I'm superset this. It can't just think about that. You have to think about the approach of to your training is to have longevity, is to be able to not only do it today, but do it again in another couple of days, or do it tomorrow and find another way to stimulate that same muscle group of those same patterns to have success in it. So things that allow our central nervous system to operate faster is speed. So when I talk about speed, I think speed is something everyone needs to train. Whether your goal is to grow bigger glutes, if your goal is to grow a bigger chest, whatever it is, everyone should be training speed. And the reason for that is because, like I mentioned, if you're only recruiting a certain amount of muscle groups by doing a certain amount of tension, and not saying that you don't recruit type 2 muscle fibers by doing it slow. I'm just saying that your muscles are meant to do things fast and to do things slow. So you need the combination of both. What I really like to do is to complement things like by doing plyometrics. Plyometrics, for those that don't know, is simply movements are a lot more explosive. They allow your muscles to work like an elastic band. You're able to pull that muscle really fast and it comes back really fast, just like a band, right? So those plyometric movements are really going to allow us to be able to forcefully add on more stress to our muscle groups and our central nervous system for us to operate and speak that language faster. And by language, I mean movement, right? So what can you do to complement this? Box jumps, jump rope, sprinting, doing some sort of Olympic move, right? You don't have to do snatches. You don't have to do, um, you know, uh, all the Olympic moves that come with it. But it's important that you apply movements that complement that. So doing broad jumps, applying just a little bit of this can give your training so much more longevity and so much more progress, from the point that you're doing things that are going to exceed you far further from a central nervous system standpoint, that is going to make other exercises easier. So this is a great reason why you should do contrast training. And contrast training is what they talk about, doing a strength exercise with a power exercise. So what do we do for that? So for example, we'll take a bench press, right? We'll do a couple reps. And by reps, I mean, we're not doing 10 reps. We're doing probably 5 reps. And then we're going to do a ball toss towards the wall with a med ball, or we're going to do clapping push-ups, or we're going to do back squats, and we're going to do jump squats in between, or box jump. So we complement those same movement patterns by doing a little bit more explosive work, and this really adds to the quality of our movement. What things can help our central nervous system, and how can we help our central nervous system get to those high levels? Because not every day you feel 100%. There's days you feel a lot less. So how can we get there? The best thing that you can do is adequate sleep. If you don't have sufficient sleep, if you're operating only on 3 hours of sleep, there's sometimes, if your body is not ready to operate and not ready to give that kind of output, you're basically wasting your time. I sometimes I tell people, rest is better than forcing yourself to go to the gym or forcing yourself to go train when you're not in the high spirits of it. Your morale's not there. You're probably not as motivated, and just thinking, oh, you know what, because I need to focus on being consistent. Being consistent is one thing, and being consistently feeling good and having longevity is another thing, right? If you get to a session and you feel like you're not up to par, you don't really feel like your strength is there, and you really push it, you might get injured. I'm not saying that you don't need to push it. You need to understand when is it appropriate to push, because pushing yourself when you're not ready, when your body's not ready, this can really be your downfall. This can be the reason why you say, I'm not consistent enough, because you're setting up yourself for failure, right? You can't buy something that's worth $20,000 if you're not feeling like $20,000 already worth, right? So you want to make sure you operate from a position that your body is not only ready for, but your central nervous system is ready, your immune system is ready, and everything feels up to track there. I also say that your training has to have a lot of variability. So you got to be able to switch things up. Don't just do the same movements. Don't just um, do the same style of training. You can complement those movements by doing movements that are very similar. So if you're doing a back squat, you can also do a hack squat. You could do a trap bar squat. You can do dumbbell squats. They're all squats. They're all the same pattern, but they're different variables. They're different things that are approaching the same kind of movement. So your body doesn't go under stress by this. And they're finding ways to get stronger, but not having to do the same things every time. So it's really important and critical in your training to apply this type of approach, because you're going to avoid injuries down the line, because doing those same movement patterns mean that there's more stress to those joints, to those areas. And the way you complement it is by having a well-rounded program that complements everything. So some takeaways from this is that strength plays a great important role, not only in the gym, but the longevity that we have in our life, and how it affects us as human beings, and how good we can feel later on in life. It's really important. I'm one of the proponents. I'm a big proponent for getting stronger and applying exercises that are going to make you feel better. But it's not worth the risk to injury when you don't feel up to par with it. It's better that you really take your time, you find your flow in training, and you're able to understand your body more. That's really what the key concept of this is. How can you train to understand your body more, to have longevity? And when I bring up these topics and we get into the role of the brain and how the brain relates to our body, it's true. I'm not saying anything that is new per se. It's just for you to understand that there's other things that you have to take in consideration, and it's not about going from 0 to 100. You rather be able to hit 80% more consistently, so when you do get to hit 100, you are more than prepared to get there. You don't want to have the fluctuation of training at 30%, then 70, and then going back and back and having a lot of fluctuation at that point. You'd rather be steadily 80%, having proper nutrition, having proper sleep, having proper rest, understanding that if you didn't get enough sleep the night before, maybe don't go hit the gym in the morning, go home, rest after work, or maybe on the weekend you decide to pick those lifts that you want to decide to push. So again, this is really you understanding and understanding that your central nervous system is something that us as coaches we take in consideration. As coaches, we have to really evaluate, a, how is that person moving, how is that person feeling, and is that person available today? You know, not just from a physical standpoint, or yeah, they're here in front of me, but are they prepared to move this type of load, and are they ready for me to push them even further? Guys, I appreciate you guys viewing this. Hopefully, you guys are liking this type of content. I got my iPad here with all my notes. I have stuff on the show notes, so you're able to go on the show notes. So you're able to see the recap of whatever we spoke about. And if you have any questions, man, shoot it my way. I have more topics. Other topics I want to get into is also nutrition, and we're gonna dive into other topics, but today was the role in the central nervous system. The central nervous system is the governor. You can't forget about the thing that rules our whole body, and the reason why you feel a certain way is because of that, right? And you ever think about the times that maybe you were being so consistent at the gym, you were on a month of a streak, just hitting it hard, and then came a week that you got sick, and you're like, how did I get sick out of nowhere? Well, you think about it, if you're always going hard, when is your rest day, right? So, and as coaches, we call this a deload week or a deload day. And deload means we're deloading how much volume we're doing. So if it's 3 sets of 10, we might go 3 sets of 5. We might cut that in half, right? Because it's not worth the injury, or it's not worth you getting to a point where you can go no longer. We want to have you more consistently. So we think about that, and you have to think about, is today a 3x10 day, or is today a 3x5 day, right? So those are the things that you have to take in consideration. Guys, I appreciate you. Much love. Send this to a friend. Like and subscribe. Show some love. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.